All right, welcome. Today we're digging into Dale Carnegie's absolute classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And we're going to pull out one of its most surprising lessons, a lesson that says the best way to win an argument is, well, to not have one in the first place. Kind of weird, right? Let's break it down.
I mean, seriously, think about it. You know that feeling, right? You've got all the facts, your logic is airtight, you are 100% correct, but when it's all over, you walk away feeling like you lost something way more important. If that sounds even a little bit familiar, stick around. You're not alone.
So to really get this, we got to talk about a guy named Patrick J. O'Hare. Now, Pat was a truck salesman over in New York. He didn't have a ton of schooling, but man, he had a fiery personality, and he absolutely loved a good argument.
And that love of a good fight, it spilled right over into his job. If a potential customer said anything, and I mean anything, even slightly negative about the trucks he was selling, Pat would just see red. It wasn't about defending the product. He would go on the attack right for the customer's throat because he was just so determined to win the point. And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? Pat won arguments constantly. He'd stomp out of a client's office feeling like a champ, thinking, I sure told him. But as he later admitted himself, he was winning all these little battles and completely losing the war. He told them something all right, but he never sold them a thing.
So this story, Patrick's story, brings us to this huge central idea from Dale Carnegie. It's a paradox that totally flipped Patrick's career and honestly his life upside down. It's the simple, kind of shocking truth about every single argument you will ever have.
And there it is. I mean, think about it. 9 times out of 10, what happens at the end of an argument? Both people just walk away more convinced than ever that they were totally right. Carnegie's point is, you literally can't win. If you lose the argument, well, obviously you lose. But even if you win, you still lose.
So, what does that even mean, lose by winning? Well, it means you get what we could call a theatrical victory. Sure, you feel good for a minute, you proved your point, but what you've really done is you've made the other person feel small. You've bruised their pride. And you know what? They're going to resent you for it. The other option is to gain something so much more valuable, their goodwill.
So eventually the light bulb goes on for Patrick O'Hare. He realized he had to stop fighting and start connecting. And the technique he started using was so simple, it's actually kind of hilarious.
Okay, so picture this. Old Pat. A potential buyer comes in and says, yeah, I'm thinking of buying a Who's It truck. Pat's first instinct? Launch into a full-scale point-by-point takedown of the Who's It truck, explaining exactly why his truck was way better. And of course, the more he argued, the more the customer just dug their heels in to defend their choice.
And here comes the pivot. The new Pat, the one trained by Carnegie, did the complete opposite. When a buyer came in and said, I'm going to buy the Who's It truck, they're the best, Pat would just look at them and agree.
He'd just say, you know what? The Who's It is a good truck. They're made by a great company. You'll never make a mistake buying one. Now, what do you think happens? The buyer is completely speechless. The fight is over before it even starts. Boom! There's just no room for an argument. And now a real conversation can actually begin.
Let's give this a name, okay? We'll call it the disarming agreement. It's this simple technique where you immediately find common ground. You validate what the other person is saying. And that one simple act just drains all the hostility and tension out of the situation. And most importantly, it opens up a path for a real discussion instead of a big old fight.
Okay, so how do we use this outside of selling trucks? Carnegie actually lays out a few key steps for turning a potential fight into a productive conversation. This whole thing really requires a complete shift in your mindset. So first, welcome disagreement. Be glad someone brought it up. It's a chance to learn. Second, just listen. Don't interrupt. Let them get it all out so you can build bridges, not walls. Third, actively hunt for things you can agree on. And finally, and this is a big one, thank them. Seriously, anyone who takes the time to argue with you is interested in the same things you are. They're not your enemy.
You know, Abraham Lincoln had a perfect way of putting this. Sometimes fighting for the right of way, whether it's with a person or a dog on a path, it's just not worth it. The damage you take from the fight is often way worse than whatever you'd get from winning.
When you really truly start to get this concept, it stops feeling like a tactic. It feels more like a superpower you can use in your everyday life.
And this is the fundamental change. Your goal is no longer about winning the point. It's about winning the person. It's about building a bridge of connection and goodwill, not standing on some lonely island by yourself shouting about how right you are. Because really, what good is being right if you're all alone?
And always remember this old proverb: you can't force someone to change their mind. It's impossible. Even if you beat them down with logic and they go silent, you haven't actually convinced them. You've just backed them into a corner. And a person who's convinced against their will, well, they aren't convinced at all.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Think about it. In your job, in your family, with your friends, where is the next argument probably waiting for you? And how can you use this idea, the disarming agreement, to turn that fight into a real connection?